to the studio sessions. My name is Brooke, and we talk about movies every week. What movies we like, why we like them, why we don't like certain movies, and what we may not love about them, and making movies. Because I am currently on the journey of making my second documentary. Before we jump into today's topic, I do have one studio note that is connected to the topic. And so I'm going to just normally I do three studio notes, but I'm going to just do the one because I do want to connect it to the episode topic. So here is this week's studio note: Spider Man, Brand New Day, in theaters near you currently. Um, it's been massive. Me and my husband went to see Young Washington this last week. As I was researching the show times for different movies, looking at the different movie options, it became very clear that Spider Man Brand New Day had a million different show times, along with the Odyssey, but particularly Spider Man. It was just coming out. And so there was just a million showtimes for Spider-Man. It was kind of that and the Odyssey that had the most showtimes, the most options, and there was only like a handful of other movies even out, let alone with a decent amount of showtimes. Many of the others had a third to a quarter of the showtimes. So it was not only premiering, but of course is just massive. So theaters were ready for that. And that was the big production happening. It was really interesting to then go to the theater, see lines for Spider-Man, and a million different theaters reserved for Spider-Man. It was really interesting, and it has done very, very well. We did not go see it because we are still catching up on the Marvel movies, and that's kind of a part of what I want to talk about in this episode. It is something that has been really fun to watch, all of the excitement over the new Spider-Man. I think that is a series that has been universally loved. I don't see a lot of negative opinions about it. So it is always exciting to see a movie do really well, and the Spider-Mans have just been one that always does really well. So that was really fun. And it was kind of cool to notice those elements of it. I think as I have gone through the process of releasing a film of my own, and over the last year as I've gone through the process of just learning more about the industry, more about production and distribution than I ever have, those elements stuck out to me more where I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, they get a lot of theater. And wow, the showtimes. You can see the movie that the theaters are prioritizing. And that makes sense. And to be fair, this one's coming in as the others are kind of going out. I mean, the Odyssey did have a few less than Spider Man also at most places I checked, because I checked multiple theaters. At most places I checked, Spider Man did have more showtimes than the Odyssey, even still. But it just was interesting. I don't know that I would have noticed those patterns before. And I think my brain is so in that mode because I'm working on this current project that it really stuck out to me. So I thought that was notable. I did also want to note, and I'm going to look it up really quick so I can be accurate. So, a quick Google search tells me Spider Man Brand New Day in its opening weekend grossed 360 million domestically. It crossed the 1 billion mark globally within 6 days of release. So it's massive. And the fun part about that is people are getting out going to the theater. Probably my favorite part of that is people getting out going to the theater. I love that. I was excited. We went on a Thursday afternoon. On a Thursday afternoon, the theater was packed for Spider-Man. It was packed. That was so exciting and fun to see. I think that's just always going to be something that makes me happy to see. It was so many different elements of distribution and release I was getting to kind of think about and see, like, oh yeah, it's on the tail end, so it's starting to transition out versus Spider-Man coming in. It was really fun. So that was that. And that is this week's studio note. So, this week's topic. If you saw the title of this episode before pushing play, you know that we're going to talk about the Marvel franchise, which is connected to Spider Man because these new Spider Man are not just a part of the overall MCU, but are woven into the whole story as most of the MCU films and TV shows are woven in to the whole story that they're telling with the MCU. And that's part of a point I want to make and kind of examine is what is the state of the MCU? Is that something that has petered out? Is the excitement less than it was? Or does it just go in waves? Is it just as exciting? I want to talk about that. I want to preface that discussion with, like I mentioned in the studio notes, I am not caught up on MCU. I'm working my way through. I am not caught up enough to watch Brand New Day. So that's why we didn't go see that yet. But I have been working my way to getting caught up. And so I've watched a lot of them in the last several days. And I've also been thinking a lot about how the whole universe franchise works. Because as I've worked my way through them, I've had to go, okay, which one do I watch next? Which do I need to be careful to watch before the others so there's not spoilers? Because I made the mistake of trying to watch all the new Spider Man without having finished some of the previous movies, and that didn't work. There was spoilers that happened because of that I was not anticipating and did not know. So that paused me in trying to watch any out of order because it's like, oh, well, that didn't work. So I'm being very careful and intentional now not to do that. And just to make sure, at the least that I know the one I'm watching isn't going to spoil anything for later, um, any that I haven't watched yet. So I've been going through that and it's been really fun. They're really fun movies. They're really fun. And I think as you get more into the more recent things, you have a choice to make of how wide do you watch? Because I started thinking of it as there's like a main through line, right? The main story they're telling that starts with Iron Man and Captain America and the Incredible Hulk, where they're introducing all of these characters and then they culminate in the Avengers, right? Starting there, you have a clear through line of what's going on with the Avengers. Things that different plot points get moved in more than just the Avengers movies. You actually can't just go from Avenger movie to Avenger movie without missing things. There's certain elements in each of them that contribute to this overall picture. That's why it's called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But it means you have a choice of focusing on just the ones that are just that through line, which does mean being careful of like, okay, watch Captain America, the Winter Soldier before this one. If you know, you know. If you followed Marvel, you get what I mean. Suffice it to say, you have to be really intentional and know the order. So, they also have the TV shows. Also, some of the ones, some of the movies that are for, I don't want to say lower level superheroes, but not as part of the main story, have kind of side shoots. Like Guardians of the Galaxy. They will be relevant later. They kind of feel like a side shoot earlier. And then there's the TV shows that I don't I I don't know if I know well enough to know how many would actually be necessary, but I know a lot of the TV shows are more offshoots and just give more context on that particular character from my understanding. Again, I'm still figuring some of this out and doing my research to be intentional. I think part of what I've been noticing is with all of that, I think some of that is what contributed to the burnout that led to some of the Marvel movies not getting the response that was anticipated. Because some of the more recent ones have not been as greatly responded to as some of the others. I think a lot of that gets attributed to burnout on it. Like, you have done so much. People are getting burnt out on it. They want something new, they want something different. I think there's a lot of factors that may contribute to that and may contribute to some people just not even trying or being interested in it. Part of that is just superheroes are not everybody's taste. Part of it is there's been so many of them. That sounds like a lot of work to watch through all of them. And then once you try to start watching through all of them, if you're like, "Ah, I'll just start, give it a chance, see how far I get," you realize how much work and research you actually have to do to watch them because otherwise you get stuff spoiled. So I think there's a combination of things happening that kind of build on this ebb and flow in reaction. Spider-Man is always going to be one that I think people react to in a big way. It's always been a favorite and it's always done really well. And I think that over time, people have kind of just found their favorites, the ones that draw a big crowd. And Spider Man is going to be one that draws a big crowd. It's got a lot of elements to it. Spider Man in and of itself, the IP is usually very, very popular. You also have the dynamic of in the new ones, Tom Holland and Zendaya are very, very likable and people like to watch them together. And so you have that element in those movies happening. I think all of that culminates and those are always going to be big and get a big response. So I was not surprised in any way that there was this kind of a response to Spider-Man when I went to the theaters and there was lines for it and it was packed for Spider-Man. So there's that. But I think that also means some of the other ones may be more picky and choosy. I think Avengers Doomsday will probably be a big one. People are going to want to see what happens. And Endgame was a big one, especially. Um, I think I think it's going to mean that people kind of go to their favorites in the theaters and maybe reserve the others for at home if it's when they have to watch to keep watching the rest. I think people are starting to be more picky And that also is going to contribute. When you have such a massive world you're building, when you have so many different elements to it, so many different offshoots and side stories and things that culminate in the central plot line, it's a lot. And so I kind of wanted to think that through a little bit, to talk that through and kind of see like, well, that's got a whole lot going on. Now, do I think, like I said, Marvel is done? In no way. There's no way Marvel is anywhere near done, and I would not expect them to be. I don't think they need to be. I would not take it to that. Do I think there's maybe some simplifying that could happen? Probably. I think focusing a little more might help. Um, I would also say this world building is something that you kind of want to watch and be careful of. I think it kind of challenged my thinking on the benefits versus the advantages versus disadvantages of having a cinematic universe in that way for your films, because it is so big and so much work, and it puts work on the audience that you got to kind of think through how they might respond to that, how many of them might actually do that work, and what that might look like, how that might affect things. I think this kind of tells you that story and is a good case study in it because they've been so popular that I think everyone has given some of them a chance and had some kind of attempt at watching them. I think it is one that you have to find that balance, and this kind of tells that story of what can happen if there's not balance versus what might happen if it got a little more balanced. So, as somebody that is currently in production of a sequel of sorts, but more of a follow up, kind of a connected project, not necessarily a direct sequel, but if I was creating a cinematic universe, would be within the same universe, it made me think. It was an interesting thought exercise. And so I wanted to talk about that. I am enjoying my process of catching up with the Marvel movies and the MCU and exploring more of it, getting back into trying to catch up with them and build back up to getting to watch Brand New Day, spoiler free. So I've been enjoying it. It is really fun. They're done really, really well. And I am looking forward to seeing more. So I would love to hear your thoughts without any spoilers for any of them. Do you follow the MCU? Are you caught up? Are you one that feels like it's too much work? What has your experience been? I would love to hear. And if you have a particular favorite, go ahead and feel free to share just the title down below. And I hope you enjoyed this. It was really fun. It's been really fun watching them, and I've had a blast. If you would like to see something from my own personal cinematic universe, if you want to use that phrase, you can see my first film, Like a Butterfly, on my website. I will put the link in the description of this episode, and you can click on that link, head to my website, and I hope you enjoy it. If you get to watch it, let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you for hanging out with me and talking movies. I will see you guys next week. Bye! The Studio Sessions is a Butterfly Entertainment production. You can keep up with all of our podcasts, YouTube videos, films, and other projects on our Instagram page. We are at Butterfly Entertainment Group. Thanks for listening.